found the skeleton, how would you tell it represents you personally? How would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome to the second annual Cambrian Bunny Award nomination show. Merry Christmas everyone, because it is old calendar Christmas currently. So in case you didn't know that, it is. We're not going to get into the full background of what that means, but just know that in most of the countries that speak Slavic languages, they're currently still celebrating Christmas. So, there you go. Guys, we are here to figure out who had what the worst argument was from creationists in 2022. Who used the worst use of the English language in 2022? Who was the worst behaved creationist in 2022? And who was the best overall creationist in 2022? And I am, of course, here with my nomination panel, Dr. Dan Stern-Cardinal and Jordan from Reason to Doubt. Dr. Dan, why don't you introduce yourself real quickly?
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Dan. I'm an evolutionary biologist, and my channel is called Creation Myths, where I take creation science way more seriously than anybody should take it. We look into their very specific, testable scientific claims, and turns out they're always terrible, each and every one of them. And that's what I do. And I take it very seriously. Sometimes there's math, and we'll do math to show why the creationists are wrong, and they're always wrong. That's my channel, Creation Myths.
All right, Jordan.
I'm Jordan. I'm a nuclear engineer, and I run a YouTube channel called Reason to Doubt. Just like you see, if you find a cool hip hop channel, we're the next channel over. Same name.
There you go.
It's basically about skepticism. We debunk all kinds of stuff. So recently we did are doing a series on the Shroud of Turin, but we've done
I've been keeping up with that.
creationism.
It's pretty good too.
It's good as a word you could use for it.
Look, the series is good. The various attempts at explaining the Shroud have been kind of bonkers.
I definitely vastly underestimated the lengths that Shroud supporters would go to support. Like I thought creationists were bad, but good golly, these guys.
I love that the Shroud guys created their entire own otherwise untested dating method, and it just so happened to date the Shroud to just the first century, and so conveniently.
Wouldn't you know it? I mean, what were the odds, right?
Crazy.
Yeah. So go check that out.
All right, well, guys, I want to explain how this is going to work. So basically, everyone here has nominated someone for at least 3 of the 4 categories. I think one person may have opted to not nominate someone for one of the categories. So what's going to happen is we're going to go through our picks, and then we are going to, after the picks are explained, what I'm going to do is I'm going to update the description for this video to include voting links. So here's the way voting works. Basically, you click on the link for the person you want to vote for and hit like on that video. It's an unlisted video, so basically the only way to get the link is if you share it, or if you come to this video to get the whole list, right? Now, for about a month, last time we actually let it go exactly 4 weeks. I'm not promising that it'll be exactly 4 weeks. It might be 5, it might be 3, I don't know. But at the end of that, whichever video in each category has the most likes is going to be the winner. Now, there are no rules about this other than that whoever has the most likes is the winner. So if you want to make like 400 sock puppets and have them all vote for the same person, I don't care. This is one of those, you can cheat as much as you want, because this doesn't matter. This is just for fun. So feel free to share the links. You can create a bot that creates a new YouTube account every 5 minutes and votes if you want to. I don't care. But not that I'm telling you to violate YouTube terms of service or anything. I would not do that. But I am saying that if you did, I wouldn't look into it. But don't. So we're going to start with worst argument, and I think what we're going to do is we're going to start with we're going to start with someone else alternately, and we're going to go like clockwise. So I think for the first one we'll start with Dr. Dan, then we'll go to Jordan, then me. Then for the next one, start with Jordan, go to me, then go to Dr. Dan. So our first category is worst argument. Dan, who is your pick for the person with the worst argument, and what was that argument?
So turns out that second question is really important for this category
Mhm.
because my nominee put out a book this year and gave us a wealth of absolutely terrible arguments to choose from.
Amazingly so.
And then something even better happened. I got to chat with him live on YouTube for about an hour, and he gave us even more terrible arguments.
So bad.
I am, of course, referring to the one and only Dr. Nathaniel Jeanson, PhD, Harvard, of Answers in Genesis.
Now, hold on.
And
Where did he get that PhD again?
it was actually Harvard University,
University?
the
I wanna
greatest university in the world.
Okay.
And because he
Got
got his PhD from Harvard, it means anybody arguing with him is automatically wrong.
Right, because he got
And
his...
those are just the rules. I don't write them. Those are just
Yeah.
those are the rules.
I
So-
mean, Rutgers, whoever heard of there, right?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
What a stupid state school.
Pretty sure Rutgers is made up.
So, I had a lot of really bad arguments to choose. I knew I was going to pick Jeanson for this category. I had to choose between his various terrible arguments that he's made this year. One that really stands out that I did not pick was that he said the Y chromosome R1b haplotype first appeared in Europe, like migrated into Europe. I think it was between like 1,500 and 1,000 years ago or 500 years ago or so. Basically, he's saying that haplotype got into Europe in the Middle Ages. We have a northern Italian Stone Age burial site where we've recovered DNA of that haplotype. And last time I checked, northern Italy is in Europe, and the Stone Age was before the Middle Ages. So that's a really good one. But that's not my pick. My pick is from my conversation with him. We were talking about his very incorrect interpretation of an unrooted human mitochondrial phylogenetic tree. And he likes to identify these three central nodes where the tree kind of radiates from and say that those three nodes represent Noah's sons' wives, Noah's daughters-in-law, and everybody has to derive one of their everybody on Earth today has to derive their mitochondrial DNA from one of those three women. And in kind of going back and forth and talking about why this doesn't work, he essentially accepted as valid my interpretation of the problem here and said, yeah, but we don't know what happened before then. There could have been some wonky things pre-flood that explain that pattern.
Wonky.
And the invocation of wonky things pre-flood, and that is a direct quote, wonky things pre-flood, that is my nominee for worst creationist argument of 2022.
Because what does it even mean? It's
Maybe if you'd went to Harvard, you'd know.
That's a good point. I bet in Harvard, wonky is one of the technical terms that they don't let the rest of us plebs know about.
Yeah. I didn't. When I was in grad school for genetics, I didn't learn about that part of it. They keep it secret unless you go to an Ivy League.
Yeah. So you're saying like maybe Yale would teach you about wonky
Maybe
things?
maybe Yale or Princeton might. Maybe. Penn wouldn't because they're whatever.
Right. Bottom of that tier.
Yeah. Right. Like, come on.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's my nominee. Wonky things pre-flood. I dare anyone to top that.
All right. Well, Jordan, I mean, you have to at least try, and I know that you do have a nomination.
That was very aggressive, Dr. Dan. So I thought I didn't want Jeanson to just sweep all the awards this year. So when you think Young Earth creationism, obviously you think of Standing for Truth, the premier Young Earth creationism channel on the internet. I like how your avatar like vigorously shook your head the instant I said that. Okay, so I'm going to nominate Standing for Truth. And obviously there's a lot of things to pick from on his channel, but it's actually kind of rare that he makes an argument himself.
Right.
Usually he's just like supporting somebody else making an argument, having people who make contradictory arguments on sometimes at the same time and saying they're all great. You know, that's usually his MO. But this time he made the argument instead of Raw Matt. So the argument has to do with the heat problem. And you've probably heard this from Gutsick Gibbons' channel. She did a whole episode on it. Basically, SFT's argument to solve the heat problem rests on the existence of fission tracks and radio halos. So if somehow you're here and watching this and have never heard of the heat problem, welcome to the channel, I guess. But basically, under young Earth creationism, under those models, or a lot of the models, they require nuclear decay to be super accelerated to the point where it would vaporize the Earth, kill everything on it. Like if you were eating like a hunk of bread, that would be too. It would be deadly radiation coming off of your slice of toast. You know, it's ridiculous, right?
Also, like by the time of Jesus, Earth would have cooled down to be only 10 times hotter than the surface of the sun.
Right, exactly.
That's cooled down to that point, by the way.
Yeah, after everything re-solidified, you know,
Right.
from the plasma state it was in. Yeah, so this is obviously a big problem for his model, and they've had George Bond and others hard at work solving this problem. Still
Crunching
no
those
answer
numbers.
Yet. Right, crunching those numbers. They last I heard they had not yet looked at the thermodynamics of this problem.
Which is the whole problem, but okay.
Is the whole problem. But I didn't nominate George Bond or his compatriot. This is SFT. So SFT's argument is that if you look in rocks today, you'll find fission tracks, which are damage in a rock done by the decay of things in the rock. Like, so something fissions, it shoots out a thing that damages the rock. You can see that. Okay. And there's also radio halos, very similar thing. They're like a ring of damage around a site where radioactive material is. And the thing about these is that they don't survive high temperatures very well. In fact, they don't even need to be very high at all. If you increase it, I forget the exact numbers, but if you increase it by something like 100 degrees Celsius from today's heat,
it would. According to Andrew Snelling, who normally I wouldn't take his word for this, but since this is already low enough of a temperature that it works fine for me. Andrew Snelling usually gave, I believe, 200 degrees Celsius as the like annealing temperature, which means that the temperature at which like fission tracks are now gone because the rock has heated up enough that damage is sort of sorted out. The crystal matrix basically just goes back into alignment around that temperature.
Yep. Yeah. So they use annealing all the time in other manufacturing processes. So yeah, if that constrains the heat to that level, you cannot have a temperature increase greater than the annealing temperature, all that damage would go away. So SFT, his argument is, well, look, we have this damage. That means that the temperature never exceeded the annealing temperature. Therefore, there was never a heat problem. Therefore, the heat problem is solved. So it's like my anti-alien space laser is working. How do you know? Well, there's no aliens. Like,
Jordan, I would like to invest in your anti-alien space laser. Thank you.
Exactly. So that circular argument is what I'm nominating. Standing for truth.
It really is amazing.
Yeah, it's
the actual way this goes is the flood should cause immense amounts of heat. Immense amounts of heat should be evident. There is no evidence of immense amounts of heat. Therefore, the flood didn't happen. That's the actual chain of logic that makes sense. Instead, he's just like, oh no, the flood, that just means that there must have been some kind of miraculous way to get rid of the heat. It's like, nah, buddy, that's not how predictions work.
Which, like, if you assume that the flood did happen as one of your premises, then it would work, but then it's obviously circular.
Right, that's when you're begging the question, because the whole point of you doing this is to show why the flood is plausible.
Which means you can't prove me wrong.
Good point.
There you go.
Set and match.
Also, I want to say,
unfalsifiable.
Dr. Tapioca Weasel has gifted a Dapper Dino membership, which has gone to Skeletor over 9,000. So, guys, if you're a channel member, put some tetrapod emojis in the chat to welcome Skeletor over 9,000. I believe back to the channel membership program, by the way.
Can I just say that I threw down the gauntlet pretty hard right there, and Dr. Jeanson had a banner year when it comes to bad arguments.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But that is a very strong nomination.
Oh, yeah.
That's an extremely strong nomination.
I spent like an hour trying to think of someone who could compete with Jeanson, who's the clear favorite for going into this thing. Not just and not just for like the quality of his arguments, but the quantity, like the sheer amount of nonsense.
Right. He has swept several categories leading up to the Oscars here, and like he is the odds-on favorite to take the banner awards.
I mean, I think that the thing there is that he just
that is a very strong case.
Traced the book he released is just so chock full of nonsense that it's like there's just so much ammo for anyone who wants to criticize Jeanson.
It's amazing.
Vishanti for $5 says, "My there was no heat problem shirt has people asking a lot of questions already answered by my shirt." Which is, yes. That is the energy that this argument kind of exudes.
Can we get those shirts printed up? Because
I mean,
I'd wear it,
yeah,
and then people would ask about it, and that would be a fun conversation.
exactly. I mean, yeah, that's something we could do.
A terrible mistake.
I have a Teespring store. Just remind me, and I'll see if I can look that up.
We should do that.
All right. So now my nomination is interestingly also Nathaniel Jeanson, but for a different argument. Now, interestingly enough, despite the fact that we have a panel of 3 nominators here, no category actually has more than 2 names in it. So,
it's Jeanson and one other person.
It's just Jeanson in every category.
Jeanson shows up a lot. Now, because this particular category is so dependent on the argument in particular, I'm actually going to have 2 Jeanson categories. So there's going to be Jeanson for the wonky things before the flood, or pre-flood or whatever, right? But then there's also going to be my pick, which is Nathaniel Jeanson just straight up saying that he's using mutation rates as the phylogenetic replacement rates. And like I said earlier, like that's just him going on camera and just putting on the clown makeup right there in front of you, right? And by the time he gets to that, that's just clown nose right on the face. Because in case you guys aren't aware of this, right, you can measure a, like parent to offspring mutation rate. You take a DNA sample from mom or dad, you test son or daughter, and you see, okay, well, you count up how many differences. But there are huge numbers of things that kick mutations out of the population. I mean, for one thing, generally speaking, you don't do these DNA tests by testing people's gonads, right? Which means you're not testing germline mutations. So already you're capturing some mutations that are going nowhere because they're just somatic in both parent and child. Further, things like genetic drift, natural selection, which Jeanson has said he accepts that humans are subject to natural selection, which is... I mean, he's right about that. It's hard to imagine a way in which you could completely remove natural selection from humanity. Humans are doing a pretty good job of weakening it, but like if you have a fatal mutation, you're not going anywhere. And I mean, even still, there are still genetic conditions which make you less likely to reproduce. So, I mean, it's hard to avoid. And then, despite the fact that he knows that this can't work, and also the fact that we actually have empirical, from historical timeline, populations of humans where we can test this hypothesis. Does the mutation rate equal the replacement rate in long-term, descent? And the answer is empirically no. Like, this isn't a question that needs to be asked, right? It's like asking, like, how long is this table? You just measure. We can do that with this.
And just to be clear... Oh, go ahead, Jordan.
Well, that data is unreliable because it contradicts Jeanson. So...
Damn, Harvard strikes again.
Yeah. I mean...
and just to be clear about the time frame here, when Dapper says historical time frames, we're talking about within the last 2 to 4 centuries.
Right.
We have like we know when my favorite example that I've been using for the last year is Tristan da Cunha settled in the 1820s, and we know who settled it and where they came from and when it happened. We have their descendants, and we can survey and look at the level of divergence in there, and like that's going back however many generations it is, a couple hundred years. And you don't get the short term. You don't get the fast rate that Jeanson uses. You get the slow rate that kicks the time back. This is not hard. This is not hard at all.
Which, by the way, just using the empirically measured phylogenetic replacement rate from historically known groups, and like we said, we're talking like modern period history. We're not even talking about medieval history. This is the modern period. And it still pushes back his ancestry calculations way farther back than he thinks the universe is old. So, like, and then he just comes out and he's like, no, yeah, I use the mutation rate as the phylogenetic replacement rate. And the thing that really gets me is that for years, Jeanson's defenders online have been insisting that he's not being that silly. No, there's no way that Harvard-trained Nathaniel Jeanson is that stupid. You're just misunderstanding his points because obviously you didn't read his book, right? Obvious. That's the only explanation. Except
No, go ahead.
Oh, except no, he just comes out and says it right in public, right on camera, and it's just like, okay.
At the same time, also, if I recall correctly, implying that Dr. Dan had not read his book.
Yes, that was also part of it. Nor his papers.
Right.
Look, no one who has read Nathaniel Jeanson's book or his papers would disagree with them. So if you don't disagree with them, you clearly haven't read them.
Well, hold on though. Maybe Jeanson's not dishonest or an idiot. Maybe he's just so self-aware he realized that nobody has read his book. Like, he cannot imagine a world where someone has read his material.
There's no way you haven't read this book. I have the sales numbers.
Okay.
You're not one of the 6.
Okay, but here's the thing, though. We're going to get to that particular topic later on today. So
yeah, I just want to just last little thing on this one is how much I personally, because this was Jensen talking to me, said this, and it's amazing how much I appreciate that, because I've had creationists to my face on camera tell me that I'm wrong about what Jensen is doing, and that and this is SFT I'm talking about, that Jensen has personally told SFT that that's not what he's doing, and there's something else going on in his math that actually makes it all work. And then a couple years later, Jensen just like, no, that's what I'm doing.
yeah, no, just completely blows that entire
It's just
idea.
great.
Yeah, no.
It's everything Jensen, the man's making a strong case to win 3 out of 4 of these awards this year.
I mean, look, at least he's being honest about that absurdly bad argument. So, by the way, Dr. Tapioca Weasel has gifted another gifts membership, which has gone to Steve Areno. So, Steve Areno, welcome. And I see that people are already sending the tetrapod emoji, so thank you very much. It is much appreciated. All right, so as we have it, the nominees for worst argument are 2 for Nathaniel Jensen, but for different arguments, which is why we're separating them out, because this is a very argument dependent thing. So we have one for I'm using the mutation rate as the replacement rate. We have one Jensen for wonky things pre-flood, and then we also have SFT for vision tracks and radio halos as evidence that there's no heat problem, instead of what it actually is, evidence there just wasn't a flood. All right, so we are now on to the second category, which is, of course, worst use of the English language. And we're going to start with Jordan, although I'm not sure that Jordan had one for this.
I actually didn't have one. I couldn't think of one. So.
Jordan. That's okay. Yeah. We'll go to me. So,
you should have just picked a raw mat video at random and like just nominated that.
Well,
it would have been fine.
I couldn't though. So that was my plan, but we have the only rule to this entire thing is that the same person can't win the same award twice.
True.
And raw mat swept last year. That took like half of my nominations away.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, we can't nominate Jensen for anything next year.
Right.
That's not
exactly.
true. Like, here's the thing: he might not win.
He might not win all of them.
You can be nominated every single year if you don't win.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So my pick for worst use of the English language is actually, so it's sort of like a twin thing, right? I'm primarily picking Gabriella Haynes, but I'm actually also sort of picking Andrew Snelling. And here's the reason for this, right? She wrote an atrocious paper on Archaeopteryx, and in addition to being completely inept in terms of actual like vertebrate anatomy and vertebrate paleontology, because spoiler alert, she's an invertebrate paleontologist, so she's completely outside of her field right now. Her thesis was on insects. Anyway, it also was full of typos and formatting errors, like capitalization was off, punctuation was off, italicization was off. It was just all over the place. And the reason that I'm actually sort of really blaming this on Andrew Snelling is that Gabriella Haynes is a native Portuguese speaker. English is at best her second language, and I suspect it might actually be her third or fourth language, because I suspect she probably knows more Spanish than she does English, because it's fairly common if you're from Brazil to have more Spanish than you do English. However, Andrew Snelling is both a native English speaker and the editor at the Answers Research Journal where this was published. So he's the one who is in charge of making sure that the formatting for all the articles that get published is correct and that there's no typos. And that's, he's the editor. That's where the buck stops. So ultimately, this is like a joint one. I have Gabriella Haynes as the name because her name is on the paper. But like, come on, Andrew. Like, fix this. You have one job at the Answers Research Journal, and it's to make sure this doesn't happen. Because your job isn't to make sure that the papers are rigorous or anything, because they're anything but.
He has 2 jobs, though, because isn't he a sizable fraction of the papers also published in Answers and Research? So
yeah,
that's
he also
true.
has to write and approve his own papers.
Yeah, that's quite the duty. Yeah. And the thing is, I would be okay with that if there were some kind of other review process that wasn't just him, but there doesn't appear to be. So
it's not good. It's not good over there.
No. And also, I put this in a script, actually, and I think the video just went live for early access, so if you're a channel member or a patron, you can see it. But I pointed out that when you look at the submission guidelines for the Answers Research Journal, they say, oh, this papers can be in any field such as like science, philosophy, sociology, theology. That's fine, but they have to be from a young Earth perspective. It's like, yeah, that's what you call having a conclusion first, and then looking for evidence to fit the conclusion. That's like the opposite of how science works. So calling this a research journal is, it's just dishonest.
Wrong.
Yeah,
Wrong.
it's wrong.
It's not just the opposite of science. It's precisely the opposite of way like peer review would work, right? Like, because you can't. Not just anybody can peer review any paper. You're supposed to have some level of expertise in the field, right?
Jensen can peer review any paper.
You're right, except for Jensen, Harvard graduate Nathaniel Jensen. Aside from him,
yes, the rest of us lowly mortals can't peer review anything.
Stay in your lane, right?
Yeah, but the thing is, they don't have enough PhDs with a young Earth view to actually have a robust peer review process within young Earth creationism, as far as I can tell.
Well, you can count all of them on like the stage at Anderson Genesis.
Yeah, basically, right? That's actually one of the problems. Is like people are like, oh yeah, there's experts who are creationists. It's like, dude, they can't get together an actual peer review process. They might as well just not exist in terms of numbers. I actually had that conversation with a creationist on Jackson Wheat's channel a couple days ago, and he's like, we're like, well, how are you coming to these conclusions? I was like, well, I look at like expert opinions, and both of us are just like, okay, but you realize that like more than 99.9% of the experts agree with us and say that you were incredibly wrong about all of this, right? He's like, well, there are some creationists, like, yeah, like, a few hundred maybe, tops, spread across every field.
I had a professor in nuclear engineering who believed that relativity and quantum mechanics were all pixie dust and fake and didn't exist. If you dig hard enough, you can find a crackpot in just like any field.
Right.
I'm sure you can.
And that's the thing.
And sometimes I feel like it's collectively our goal and our friends' goal to find every one of them.
I've just been informed that Jensen is also apparently a modified sniper, just like JM Truth. So, you guys, do you two know about JM Truth?
I do not.
Oh, he's a flat earther who likes to give quote unquote physics lessons while standing in a field in a butcher smock that he thinks looks like a lab coat. And he'll say things like, basically he agrees with our friend Matt Powell that there must be oxygen where the sun is because it's on fire. And when he's going through his qualifications, one of the things that he says that he did was he went to modified sniper school while he was in the military. No one has been able to figure out what that is. Because, as far as anyone can tell, there's no such thing as a modified sniper. We're not even sure what that would mean.
I never went to sniper school, but I never heard anyone claim to go to modified sniper school either, so...
Yeah, nor have I. It's a very special claim from a very special guy. We'll just put it that way. He's also about as bad at spelling as Matt Powell is. My favorite one was when he had a falling out with a once business partner, and they were working on a documentary again. His business partner took all the filming equipment and the vehicles and just left. And he put out a statement that he had been abandoned, ABANDED, and he needed help because he had been abandoned. Anyway, that's because he's not on this list. So Gabriella Haynes is our first pick for that paper that just, like I said, the editorial staff, which is, as far as I can tell, just Nathaniel Jensen. Like, dude, if you can't edit for spelling and grammar and punctuation and formatting, hire an editor. You can probably find an editor who's going to work for like $20 an hour or something, and that's like just out of college with an English undergrad degree or something. Who just needs a quick job to like get them by until they get a real one. And probably just do that. And they probably won't care that what they're editing is nonsense. They're just going to make it nonsense that's well formatted and spelled correctly.
Should hire Rawmat.
Or Rawmat's editors. Or faithful, honest, and true, the crazy heroin addict from Tasmania. You know he was on my channel once?
Yeah, I know.
Rawmat or...
No, Faithful, Honest, and True. And
that That was before was that before or after the singing, the karaoke?
Oh, that was before.
That was before the karaoke.
Yeah,
okay.
he'd have been banned from my channel before he made the death threat with karaoke.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. All right. So, Dan, you have a pick for worst use of the English language. So let's see who it is.
All right, so my nominee for worst use of the English language is Institute for Creation Research, and specifically their president, Dr. Randy Galuzza, and their argument against natural selection and for CET, continuous environmental tracking, specifically the part of this argument, which you can find, there is a 3-part video series they did on this earlier this year, in which they say natural selection personifies nature. It makes nature a conscious agent that is consciously affecting living organisms and causing them to change. And I would ask the fine people of ICR to read Origin of Species by Charles Darwin, please. Because he actually explains in that book how it's not a conscious thing.
Right.
It's not anyone saying, oh, that works, this is going to work, let's have those, become more frequent.
Hold on. Wait. You're saying that they're saying that natural selection is a conscious agent.
They're saying that they are straw manning the presentation by biologists of natural selection by saying, by promoting natural selection, you, the biologist who teaches natural selection, is personifying nature and making a conscious agent out of nature.
Yeah, it's wild.
That's the face I made too. Mm-hmm. Yep. I was like, no, Darwin went out of his way to explain how that's not what's happening here, because he actually spends a good chunk of the early part of that book, which I recommend everybody read, talking about selective breeding and artificial selection and like domestication of crops and animals. And then he draws an analogy to say that the same basic processes work in nature, where certain traits are over or underrepresented in the members of a population who successfully reproduce. But unlike in domestication, nobody is picking those traits. They are simply due to differences in reproductive success. Right? He goes out of his way to explain how there is no consciousness, no entity, no goal in this process. And now, in the year of our Lord 2022, ICR puts out a series of videos, and one of the things they do in these videos is talk about how you can't accept natural selection as a valid process because it personifies nature. And my dudes, this book is in the public domain now. You don't even have to buy it in order to read it.
My middle schooler could refute this. Right. Does he not know what an analogy is?
He's actually, here's the thing, he's actually just lying. He's actually just being a dishonest hack.
It's hard to conclude anything else. Actually, guys, if you would rather see an argument for this from Randy Galuzza himself, but without it being unfiltered, and you'd rather have it be filtered through my refutation of it, I would encourage you to check out my series, Natural Selection Rebunked, which is a 3-part series, or I believe you can now see the whole series in a single video that's almost 2 hours long or something. And I go through in rather excruciating detail every single source that he cites and why none of them actually provide the evidence that he says they do.
It's a comprehensive butchering of the English language, this characterization, and so that's why it's my nominee.
Actually, me and Peter from Paleologos also did a joint live stream on my channel about how bad this argument is.
This is. Yeah, it's really bad. It's really bad.
That's one of my favorite things about this is even the rest of young Earth creationism is dude, what are you talking about?
2 young Earth creationists who have done things specifically opposing this. Dr. Nathaniel Jeanson, which is how Galuzza is wrong.
Oh, right.
And Jason Lyle.
Yep, Jason Lyle actually split with ICR over this. He used to be an ICR guy.
Yes. So, yeah, that's my nominee in this category.
All right. Well, so that is worst use of the English language, guys. We have Gabriella Haynes for the atrocious formatting, spelling, punctuation, grammar of her already atrocious Archaeopteryx paper, which again, you can see me going through it almost line by line on this channel. Also, the channel Joel Duff, with Dr. Joel Duff, unsurprisingly, also has, I believe, at least one, maybe 2 videos about the topic of that paper.
He covered it, yeah.
So, yeah, it was... And, of course, that's not just on Gabriella Haynes, although that her name is on like the nomination. It's also Andrew Snelling for allowing this to occur on his platform, where he is the editor, the man in charge of making sure that doesn't happen. And I'm not saying like, oh, he should have just not published it. I'm saying he should do his job and edit, because he's the editor.
I'd say it's even more on Snelling than her, because like you said, it's not a first language. I get it. Like,
yeah.
That sucks. Yeah, totally. But like, that's why you have an editorial staff. Yeah.
Right. Honestly, I would have called it Nathaniel Jeanson, except that it's her name that's actually on the paper. So like
Snelling, you mean?
Snelling.
Yeah, sorry, I would have said it was Snelling, except that like her name is the author.
Jeanson. The Harvard thing works both ways. That's Jeanson's fault too.
Oh, okay.
With great power comes great responsibility.
There you go. All right. So we're on to worst behaved. So I will start, and I believe that this is actually myself and Dr. Dan ended up selecting the same person for similar enough reasons that we're combining them.
Oh, did it really? Oh, man.
So I picked Nathaniel Jeanson, and
no.
I guess it was Jordan who also picked Jeanson. Nope. No? Did one of you not pick a worst behaved? Do I have to add a worst behaved category?
I mean, we could just real quick. I picked Ken Ham.
I also picked Ken Ham.
Oh, okay, that's what happened. Okay. All right, never mind then. I guess I was the only one who picked Jeanson. So I picked Jeanson basically for being a little bitch about the fact that no one is taking his book seriously. And by no one, I mean not even the other creationists.
Nobody.
No one cares outside of AIG. And even within AIG, it's basically just Ken Ham. Because even the other PhDs at AIG are like, I don't really want to touch this one.
Where's Purdom on this?
Right? The other geneticist?
She's got PhD in genetics. Where's she?
Yeah, nowhere to be found.
Not defending Traced.
Yeah, and you can just tell he's so butthurt about it.
So salty.
His anus is clenched so tight about this. Like, I'm sure he hasn't taken a shit in like 4 months.
For sure. Like, this is like his magnum opus, right? This
and
is like
no one
the
cares.
crowning achievement of his illustrious career.
And he's
teasing this book for years.
Seriously. And we're not exaggerating. For years, he's been like, I've got this whole big thing coming. It's going to blow open the whole thing. Young Earth creationism proved. And then it comes out, and the most attention it gets is Rob Carter is like, I appreciate that someone's trying, but I don't think this is it. And that's like the one-line summary of his review of Traced.
Rob, his review, which was very comprehensive and I think very fair, as a young earther who doesn't buy what Jeanson is selling, his review boils down to A for effort, C- for execution.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, it's honestly been kind of hilarious.
There was also the piece that Rob Carter wrote about a real paper about human migration and haplotypes and kind of reconstructing the history that way. And Rob Carter going over that paper, first of all, threw some shade at me in that piece, of course. And then
you're a troubler of the creationist world.
He also very specifically lodged critiques at that paper that extremely specifically also apply to Traced.
Yes.
And it seemed the timing was very coincidental. It was curious. Made you wonder about the timing of the publication of that piece, and it was in between the publication of Traced and his review of Traced. It was roughly in the middle, like right in the middle there, and it kind of made you wonder if he wasn't kind of criticizing Jeanson without saying it. And then a couple months later, he had the review, and then that answered that question.
And basically, since then, Nathaniel Jeanson has basically, every time he's appearing on anything that isn't just, oh, look what my book Traced indicates about this people group, when he goes on with Ken Ham, because it's the only person who'll go on with him up for these. Everything else that he's done in public has basically just been being an extremely whiny little bitch about the fact that no one's taking him seriously, and he's making predictions. It's the gold standard of science, you guys.
And also that
made
nobody-
a prediction. That's all that matters. Is
Right.
that you make
Well,
the prediction.
By the way, I want to
It's
say that Dr. Tapioca Weasel has gifted another membership, and that it has gone to. We go with Dr. Legender. I'm not positive. Let me know how to pronounce it, preferably by using the International Phonetic Alphabet and tagging me. So, thank you very much. I don't think it's that unusual of a request. It's the most unambiguous way for people to tell me how to pronounce their names.
Mm-hmm.
The International Phonetic Alphabet.
Yeah.
It's very objective and clear.
The other thing I love about this whole Jensen situation is that he has spent months complaining that nobody will engage with him over this, but has also turned down invitations to do that.
Oh, numerous invitations.
And also says that he will be writing a comprehensive response to his critics.
Someday.
I think that will possibly make the nominations for 2023.
Or 2024, depending on when it comes out.
Depending on when it's published. Yeah, we'll see.
I think the only way he's like engaged with a critic was by accident because he made the terrible mistake to go on a live call-in show.
Go on an open mic show. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That didn't go
True.
well.
Don't do that. That's where, for people wondering, it was on the Apologetics Live show on the Striving for Eternity channel. And that's where I spoke with him, and that's where he dropped both Wonky Things Pre-Flood and I'm Using the Mutation Rate as a substitution.
That one got him 2 nominations this year.
Yeah, that 1 hour conversation got him 2 and could have gotten him more nominations, but there's only so many of us here tonight.
Right. Well, I think it's probably time for you guys to go into your reasons for picking Ken Ham. Dr. Dan, why don't you go first, and then we'll have Jordan. And I'm going to be right back because I'm going to refill this this pina colada because you know what? I live in Arizona, and it was almost 26 degrees yesterday. So you know what? It's like summertime.
It's Celsius, people. That's a
that's
joke.
Celsius. Yeah.
Right.
That was definitely Celsius.
Probably anyone watching would have gotten that anyway. I need to say it, but yeah. Okay, so my rationale for picking Ken Ham is that in the last, AIG has always obviously been socially conservative, but in in this past calendar year, Ken Ham specifically has just gone pedal to the metal, full bore culture war stuff. And there is not a conspiracy about the liberals that he is not pushing at this point. He is going full anti-vax, QAnon, pedophile, he's just going all out. He's talking about Drag Queen Story Hour, and he's talking about he's demonizing the trans community. He just everything. He's just going all out, 100%, turning his ministry into a venue to amplify culture war BS. And in doing so, and the reason I'm making this for worst behaved is because this stuff has actual real world consequences for people. This stuff gets people hurt and it gets people killed. And you would be hard pressed over the last year to find somebody with a megaphone the size of Ken Ham's who is using it to do more damage in the world among the young earth community. So that's why Ken Ham, I don't know if I can say this on this channel, but Dapper left. So whatever. Ken Ham, giant asshole, gets my nomination for this category.
Yeah, I picked Ken Ham for similar reasons, specifically for his demonization of the LGBTQ community. He's gone all in on it. Like you said, they've always been anti-trans, anti-homosexual, but Ken Ham himself has taken it upon himself to fight this fight in 2022. And specifically, he has done talks where he compares... He doesn't exactly say they're equivalent, but he puts gay marriage and gender issues, which is just a euphemism for trans things, on literally the same page of bad things as pedophilia and racism and things like that. And he clearly thinks that they're just as bad, right? He has written articles about the how abusive it is, how people are just like tricking their kids into thinking they're trans. It's stuff. And like if none of this was enough, he is so far out there. He called out Donald Trump because Donald Trump wasn't bigoted enough for him. He was like, Donald Trump had a gay wedding at Mar-a-Lago, and Ken Ham was like, nope, that's not, you're not far right enough for me.
Which is just amazing. Like,
amazing.
Wow.
Yeah.
So yes, Ken Ham, because he's certainly not the only one who hammers this stuff. Like it is not universal, but is very common for someone who's young Earth creationist to also be extremely far leaning to the right, and therefore also be anti-trans. But because of his reach, he takes the cake.
Yes, this is an appropriate time, by the way, guys, for the emoji that is a sack of eggplants labeled AIG.
Yeah, is it Dapper? Don't you have a thing? AIG is a container of fallacies.
Yeah. So when I do the drinking game, one of the drinking triggers that people can pay to trigger is that if anyone super chats anything that contains the semantic information equivalent to AIG is a bag of dicks, we take a drink. I have to say it that way because YouTube will censor just a direct AIG is a bag of dicks super chat. So like you have to be a little creative.
So
so that's why I say anything containing that semantic content.
Concept, yeah. All right.
If that idea is put into my brain by your super chat, we take a drink for it.
If anybody wants to see just a microcosm of this steering of AIG in this direction and the panic-inducing kind of flavor of it, just go to the AIG YouTube channel and just look at their thumbnails over the last few months.
Oh yeah, they've been terrible.
They're just straight up playing right into this panic, and it's so completely despicable. It's so bad.
It's all just like Georgia Purdom looking horrified with a title that says like, "You'll never Christian reacts to horrible." Like
you'll never believe what they're teaching your kids, and it's a trans flag. Like it's really bad.
Didn't they do like a Twitter poll where they like asked about whether they should be like hammering these social issues, and overwhelmingly it was like no.
Yeah, their audience, which is I'm pretty sure the majority of who's following them, were like, no, we would prefer creationism and apologetics instead of culture war stuff. Thank you.
Yeah,
and like I think the problem is that. Like, I think Ken Ham realizes somewhere deep down that those things aren't actually being very convincing.
The young Earth creationism stuff? Yeah,
and his apologetics. Because ultimately, neither his apologetics nor his young Earth creationism is very good.
You mean Jensen's not bringing the crowds, filling up the auditorium with his stuff about like Y chromosome haplotypes and like where Ken Ham's ancestors are from? You mean that's not paying the bills? Come on, no way.
Apparently not. Break. Also, we have 2 super chats. My Unfinished Journey says for $5. That reminds me, time to Google Santorum again. Good luck.
If you're too young for that one, you're in for a treat.
And Olivia Williams for 2 beaver bucks says AIGS. Oh, sorry, we're doing French. Whenever
accent on, come on.
Whenever like romance language pops in, I have to take a second to see like, okay, which like brain mode do I have to shift into to read this? So, AIG est un sac d'orange génital mâle. Which, I mean, technically we're not doing the official drinking rules, but I do have a pina colada here, so I'll take a drink for it.
But if you, cheers. So Dapper, is there room in your swear jar for an F-bomb? Because I feel like with Ken Ham, it's.
There's always room for 1 per stream.
I'm claiming it for this one. Fuck Ken Ham.
Fair enough. You think that we've covered that one sufficiently?
Yes. I think so.
All right, so let me double check. I have added both of those links. So for Worst Behaved, once again, we have Nathaniel Jensen for just being such a bitch. Like, just such a tiny little bitch.
A baby back bitch.
Right, about everyone ignoring his wonderful work that everyone should realize just proves the flood, guys. It proves the young age of humanity. It proves the flood. All of this. Also, My Unfinished Journey for $2 says AIG is a donkey load of dangle sticks. There you go.
I mean, it gets it across.
Yeah. And then we also have Ken Ham for basically being like somehow more bigoted than like your bigoted uncle that you don't really want to talk to and you only see at like Thanksgiving. Somehow like taking that and then turning that up to 11 such that like even Donald Trump can't escape. Trump is far too woke for Ken Ham is basically what I'm hearing. Far too woke. Goodness.
Trump, noted champion of feminism.
Okay, so next we are on to best overall. So what I'm going to do is, Jordan, technically I don't think you started one of these because like the rotation that I chose just kind of skipped over you several times. So we're going to start with you.
Sure. So you have to remember that we're grading on a curve of chat. So like this is the best Young Earth creationist, right? So not the best, this isn't Time Person of the Year, but my nomination is Peter, otherwise known as Paleologos. So the reason I'm nominating Peter is because he does a pretty good job of calling out his fellow Young Earth creationists when he perceives that they've done something wrong, they've misused a paper or whatever. And though he is a Young Earth creationist, so I disagree with a lot of what he has to say, it does take a level of courage to fight against your own tribe, and especially when your tribe is so vanishingly small as Young Earth creationists,
and so particularly tribal on top of it.
Yes, they're very much in group versus out group sort of thing. And so for Peter to stand up, and he's what? I don't know if he's even turned 18 yet. I mean, he's a kid.
I feel like he's going to be starting college next year or something like that.
Right. So he's a kid. So it takes a lot of courage and personal integrity to stand up to your fellow, the people on your side. So
yeah, I agree. And he's caught flack for it.
I mean, for sure.
Especially other YouTube creationists have been very critical of him.
Though it's amazing because the other YouTube creationists are typically like older people like myself, or they're not me, I'm not criticizing, but people my age or whatever.
Right.
And they're like trying to throw shit at this like teenager who is just like shuts them down every time.
It's so bad too.
Don't start a land war in Asia. If you're in your 30s or older, don't pick an internet fight with a teenager. They will wreck you.
They will. I've seen so many awesome like exchanges between him on various places like Facebook, or not Facebook, like YouTube comments and stuff. And he just absolutely destroys some of the other young. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
It's just like, my God, good job, dude.
It's very much you practiced for this. I was born into it, right? It's like you don't pick an internet fight with somebody 20 years younger than you. Yeah. They're better at this than you are.
Yeah, I started using the internet when I was like, like a teenager or something. He started using the internet when he was a toddler. You
merely adopted the internet.
Right. Exactly. I was born into it. Oh, sorry. I was born into it. Dr. Tapioca Weasel for $2 says, Peter's a freshman in college. I believe he is 18. That sounds right to me, but I'm not on my own authority going to confirm.
He was definitely 17 approximately a year ago. So if he's not 18, he's very close.
Okay. Misanthropic Humanist for $2 says, shouldn't Best YEC be exclusively posthumous? Well, we're going for during the calendar year in question. So then that would be extremely restrictive because it would be restricted to like creationists who died like that year. So like
there have actually been a bunch of those because they're anti-vaxxers. So
yeah,
that would actually be a fairly significant pool this time around.
That has been one of my favorite things about Young Earth creationism since 2020 is like you've had several organizations, I think CMI is one of them, who's like been like, hey, you guys should get vaccinated, vaccines are good, whatever, and they were just shocked that their fans are anti-science and can't understand why vaccines are good.
Yeah,
how did this happen?
Well, it's so weird that CMI would have a largely anti-science audience. I just don't get it.
It peak leopards eating people's faces. Just unimaginable that they would turn around and eat your face after you train millions of people to hate scientists and distrust the process of science. And now, but actually in this one, no, yeah. They're not going to believe you.
To be fair, though, that was last year.
That was last year. I did 2 videos on that. Dapper joined me for one of them, and that was a trip down. That was a trip into conspiracy town. Those comment threads. Whew.
By the way, less than half of the people watching have hit the like button. which means once again I like less than half of you half as well as you deserve. So yeah, don't even try. It's not going to work. There's no way to untangle that. I actually watched an entire hour-long video of someone trying to disentangle that sentence, and their conclusion was like, it could mean many things. So anyway,
I always interpret it as an insult. That's how I interpreted it.
Well, that probably just means that you're pessimistic about people.
True.
There you go. See. Okay, we have another super chat from Blitz Winters for $5 that says AIG is a garbage bag of dried up pickles. Thank you very much.
All right. Yeah.
All right. So Dan, have you? Now you also picked Peter for essentially a similar reason.
Yeah, my nominee was also Peter for this, and the reason that I wanted to highlight Peter for this is because we talk about the three-legged stool of young Earth creationism. To be honest, informed, creationist, and you can pick two.
Yeah,
you can pick two of those.
As a rule, you cannot pick all three of them.
And Peter is really making a try at sticking to all three. He's obviously young Earth creationist, so I disagree with him on all of the conclusions. And like Jordan said, we're grading on a curve here. So like there have been some unfortunate Twitter threads about things like abortion and the trans community. But again, we're talking about young Earth creationism on a curve. Universe of young Earth creationists. There's
a whole lot of really terrible people in the entire universe of young Earth creationism.
Right. So you have somebody who is as young as Peter is, who is really making a strong effort to present accurate information honestly. And this is the thing that I really appreciate, is to represent the critics of young Earth creationism accurately, which is often something that's hard to find in the young Earth community, let's say, delicately. Now, this should not necessarily come as a surprise if you know kind of Peter, because he works with Todd Wood, who, if I recall, won this award last year.
He did. Yes, he did.
Yeah. So for largely the same reasons of basically trying to convey accurate information and not like egregiously straw manning the opponents of young Earth creationism.
Yeah. Todd Wood's position is basically, look, creationism is in a weaker position scientifically than the consensus. And I think we can fix that, but we shouldn't pretend that that's not the case. Which is about as honest a position as you can take while being a young Earth creationist. Right.
And Peter very much kind of is in that I think Todd Wood is doing a good job to whatever extent he's contributing to this trajectory. I think he's doing a good job of kind of helping.
Yes, I would love for there to be more Todd Woods and fewer Ken Hams.
That would be a significant improvement, to say nothing of the Kent Hovines of the world. It would be great to have fewer of those popping up on random YouTube channels, right?
Or SFTs or Uncooked Matthews or
they're all I lump all those under like Kent wannabes though. That whole thing. It's all just trying to, emulate.
That's who I want to be when I grow up.
Well, hey, at this rate, given Kent's health, I think there will be one fewer Kent Hovind here pretty soon.
You're not wrong.
I mean, he's admitted to having on-camera strokes.
Yeah.
So it's
well, I don't want to. I'm not usually one to like. I don't buy into, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. But I don't buy into that.
Really? What?
Yeah, I don't buy. Yeah, no, I mean, when someone dies, I don't buy into that. Like, it's just accurately, talk about whoever it is. So when when that happens, there'll be conversations.
Look, this is a man who drove the, we'll just say, the felony child abuse bus.
So dark.
He drove the felony child abuse bus.
Yeah, it's gotten really dark. For anyone who is unfamiliar with the Kent story, I encourage you to take a look at Polagia's channel and the collaboration he's done with Atheist Jr. They have 2 long videos on this. It's great work. And man, that second installment got real dark.
Great, but it's disturbing.
Yeah,
like,
it's bad.
The first part of it was like, yeah, it's bad, but like you can also kind of laugh at him while you're doing it. It got like
it gets dark. It's bad.
Yeah. I'd also encourage you to check out the interview that Atheist Jr. did with Kent Hovind's ex, Cindy Lincoln, as well as the one I did, because that is a much more personal side of how dark things are over there at Dinosaur Adventureland.
Yeah, shout out to AJ Atheist Jr. for his work on the Kent beat. He's
Absolutely.
actually pushed a lot of the story forward. So anyway, but that's Peter's my nomination for basically trying to convey information accurately, despite being a young Earth creationist. So and not being like a jerk about it, which is an important part of this.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've had multiple amicable streams with Peter, both disagreeing and agreeing with him on various topics, right? Like, we both talked about, this was off air, but we talked about how bad the Gabriella Haynes paper was because he also read it and was kind of astonished at how bad it was, how badly she misunderstood the basic idea of what all these cladograms she was looking at were trying to say, how much she butchered the Linnaean definition of class AVs, because that was one of her points, was like, oh yeah, we should follow the traditional classification for AVs, and both Peter and I noticed that she wasn't doing that. Because, I mean, you can just look it up. It's in Systema Naturae, right? You can just look up the text. And it doesn't take, like, super advanced Latin to read the definition of AVs in that text in Latin. It's pretty basic.
Also an old book, also in the public domain. You don't even have to buy that one.
Yep.
What's your excuse? Creation. Okay, that one's in a different language, so maybe that's your excuse.
There are translations.
There are translations.
But also, like I said, like, is like San Rubio that hard to figure out that it's red blood, that birds have red blood? Like, come on. It's not that hard. Like, have you ever studied Spanish or French? You can probably work through this Latin. This is not super advanced Latin. You're not reading Virgil or anything. Anyway, so I picked Rebecca from Bread of Life. And I actually had to double check the date on this one because it was actually something that happened in like late January of 2022.
Was it that long ago already?
It was. Yeah.
Time flies.
Yeah. So basically, now she's been on hiatus from YouTube for a large part of 2022. But she's back. This did happen. Sorry. Oh, one quick. I have a cough. Maybe I inhale some of this pina colada instead of swallowing it. Gotta be careful with that. Anyway, so yeah, in January of 2022, she released a video about why she is a LGBTQ affirming Christian and why you should be too, assuming that you're a Christian, right? I guess she would probably say that you should be too even if you're not a Christian, because I'm sure she would want you to convert to Christianity. But whatever, the video was addressed to current Christians, not potential converts, I suppose. And she caught a lot of flack for that. And it was also I thought it was a heartfelt and seemed to be very sincere video. I appreciated it because, quite frankly, like we talked about with Ken Ham, we get a lot of bigotry from the young Earth creationist side. Like a lot. And we don't talk about it a whole lot because all of us are mostly focused on their scientific arguments. And I mean, gay people are icky isn't really a scientific argument. Like, what data are you using to support that? There isn't any. You just feel like they're icky and you think your book agrees with you?
Excuse me. It's the Bible. That's all the data you need.
Well, there you go. But apparently, as demonstrated by not just Rebecca, but many other Christians I know, you don't actually have to go ahead and say that the Bible requires you to think that gay people are icky. So, also, John Smith says, AIG saculus fallorum est. There you go. Thank you very much. And I do appreciate you putting the verb at the end like a proper high-class Roman. That's, I don't know if you guys know, but if you ever read, like, Senate... Like, because we have like minutes from like Senate meetings in Rome, right? And you can tell who the really well-educated speakers are because they'll go into like this long convoluted sentence, all these like nested clauses and whatnot, and then the final word in the sentence is finally the main verb of the entire sentence. And like that's like the super fancy way to speak Latin, is to make sure that your verb is at the end of your absurdly long sentence, so that everyone has to wait until the very end to figure out what the main action of the sentence even is in the first place. Which is actually kind of annoying in those sentences. Like, you're just sitting there trying to think, you're like, okay, so this is the indirect object, and this indirect object is the subject of this subordinate clause, and then okay, that's the verb for this subordinate clause, but then there's going to be a main verb eventually, right? Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, that is the nominations for best overall. Rebecca for being not just non-bigoted, but being actually coming out and saying, not only am I not bigoted, you shouldn't be either. And here are my reasons why. And look, I'm not going to assess her reasons why, right? Because they're mostly things like theological things that I'm not going to put my hat in that race, right? Like, or that ring. Just whatever. But I appreciate that she's being proactive in advocating that a largely very bigoted group maybe cut that out.
Yeah, I feel like some of them could really benefit from reading the teachings of a certain first century Jewish rabbi. He was an apocalypticist. He believed a lot of things that would probably seem silly to people in modern day. But one central part of his teaching was that, you should love thy neighbor. And that was like a very important thing to him. Another one who did it was also Jesus, but.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, it doesn't really ring a bell, but.
Yeah.
All right, so
yeah, I just before we move on, I just want to second everything Dapper said that Rebecca deserves a lot of credit for that. She caught a lot of flack for that, so she deserves a lot of credit for doing that.
And also, not just from Christians, she also caught a lot of flack from atheists who apparently didn't like the idea that you could be a non-bigoted evangelical.
Well, don't worry, because there are plenty of bigoted atheists too. Let me tell you.
Yeah. Yeah, a couple. There are a whole lot of atheists who could have taken to heart what she was saying about accepting people. Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I'm in total agreement with that. But look, this is not. If you think that this is the channel that doesn't criticize atheists, you haven't been here very long. It's not the main focus, but my goodness, there's a lot of bad atheists going around out there saying silly nonsense, or in some cases, just evil things. So yeah, this is not a channel that thinks that evangelical Christianity has the monopoly on dumb and evil. So, but actually, that wraps up the nominations. So I guess I will go through and repeat what all of the nominees are for each category. I'll repeat how you can vote, and then we will get some final thoughts. And just like last time, this isn't a super long stream. Last time I checked, and we went just over an hour. That's where we are now. So let's see. For worst argument, we have Nathaniel Jeanson twice for two different arguments. First, we have it for I'm using the mutation rate as the replacement rate, which, like I said, it was just like watching him put on the clown makeup. Like, it really was. We have Nathaniel Jeanson for, quote, wonky things pre-flood, which is an actual quote, by the way, which is just, I don't even know what to say with that.
Possibly the greatest thing I've ever done on the internet was getting that out of Jeanson. Wonky things pre-flood. That might be the single greatest thing I have ever done on the internet.
I do think it is up there with being labeled a troubler of the creationist world. Those two things are definite claims to fame.
Top of the resume. That's right there.
Like, is that in your intro and your syllabi now?
I should. It's the troubler is in my Twitter bio.
Oh, okay. Top of your CV.
Okay, hold on. Speaking of CV, you remember when Kent Hovind was asked for his CV and he just didn't know what that meant?
Yes, I do.
So amazing.
Classic.
I loved it.
Classic.
It's like, aren't you someone claiming to have a PhD, my dude? You don't know what a CV? And then it was spelled out for him. It's like, it's curriculum vitae. It's like, the things that you've studied and where you studied, who you studied under.
Dapper. You have read that man's entire
oh my God, have I?
PhD thesis from front to back, as have I.
So bad.
That man barely knows the English language. You and I both know he does not know Latin.
Okay, but when it was explained to him, do you remember what he said was for who he'd studied under?
No.
His dad. He learned a lot from his dad, Dan. It was so amazing. All right, but anyway, we also have Nathaniel Jean. Oh no, that was already done. We have SFT for fission tracks and radio halos are evidence that the heat problem has been solved, when in fact they are just direct refutation of the flood. Which is just chef kiss right there. Just mwah.
I want to see Jensen sweep as many of these awards as he can, but damn, that is a very strong contender. That is
really is.
And,
that is
and
a
the
very
thing
strong
about
one.
it is, like, not only did he make that argument, but he said, basically, I'm so confident in how amazing this argument is that if anyone could possibly refute it, I'd concede that the heat problem is unsolved. Have at it, atheists.
Okay. So, for worst use of the English language, we have Gabriella Haynes, which is really mostly an Andrew Snelling, but again, hers is the name that's actually attached to the paper, so, you know. For the atrocious formatting, spelling, grammar, punctuation in her Archaeopteryx paper. Actually, the spelling wasn't super horrible, but just about everything else was. Like, if you watch the walkthrough that I did, I'm constantly saying things like, this should be capitalized, this should be italicized, you're missing a comma here, and it's just, like, all over the place. And so, yeah, Andrew Snelling, like, dude, just do your job. Like, you have like 2 jobs, or 3 jobs, right? Write nonsense papers and approve them. Edit other people's papers that you're approving, and then lie on stage. You're really good at the lying on stage, but I don't know what's going on with the other 2. If you don't believe me about him lying on stage, just go watch my Andrew Snelling is a Liar movie. It's I think it's my 6th most popular video ever. So yeah, it's the one where it's got a picture of Andrew Snelling looking slightly confused, and it just says glares and confusion or something like that glares and dishonesty on the thumbnail.
I don't know if anyone else noticed that, but you almost said Nathaniel Jensen, which would be the second time tonight. You confused Jensen for Snelling.
Snelling
because
and Jensen are basically the same person.
They're all so similar in terms of just like
they're so
saying
bad.
nonsense.
Yeah.
Okay, so we also have Randy Galuza for natural selection personifies evolution, which I don't even know. I don't even know where to go with that.
Clearly explained in an obscure book from 1859
that nobody's heard of.
That no one's ever heard.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, speaking of 1859, here's something I noticed. Creationists love to quote from the first edition of Origin of the Species when there are 6, and they love to quote parts in the first edition where Darwin is talking about some unsolved problem that by the 6th edition is either been solved or is largely been solved, and they don't bother to talk about that part.
My favorite example of that, and this is a very me thing, because it's not like a thing that creationists like to harp on as much, but my favorite example of that is I think it was by the 5th edition, Darwin, without coining the term punctuated equilibrium, had articulated the concept of punctuated equilibrium very clearly, saying that the quote is something along the lines of, "The long as measured in years, the periods of adaptation are short compared to the periods of relative stasis in between." And it's like, that's punctuated equilibrium you just described, sir. Mm-hmm. That is exactly what that is. That wasn't really a popular thing until 110 years later, but that's what you just described as punctuated equilibrium.
Which is pretty cool.
So, which is very cool. This is a guy, Darwin, look, there's a lot of problems with Darwin. I was talking in a public thing when I was in college one time, and evangelical young earth creationist student had a question, something about Darwin being a racist, and my answer was, yeah, Darwin was a giant racist.
I mean, he was a 19th century white male. What do you want?
Rich white male from England. Yeah, like, and you know, for all his flaws, there's a lot of flaws with Charles Darwin. There's a lot of stuff you can criticize Darwin about, but this was not a guy who, once he stated an idea, stuck to it if he found contrary evidence. Like one of the things he was good at was adjusting when he learned new things. And yeah, there's lots of examples of that. If you compare the 1st edition to the 4th, 5th, 6th editions of Origin, so much of that going on.
And also, if we're going to compare him to other rich white males of the mid 19th century, comes out a whole lot better in terms of racism. One thing, he was one of the first abolitionists. You know, he was an abolitionist before it was cool. Yeah. Well, one of the
I don't
first.
know if it was one of the first,
Very
but
broadly speaking.
he was definitely before it was a big. Because when did England abolish slavery?
Well, so that's complicated because first they abolished it in England, but they kept it in all of their colonies for a very long time.
And it was actually, if you've ever seen the show, the AMC show Turned, about like espionage during the Revolutionary War, the big bad in that show later became the governor of Canada, and that was the first legislative abolition of slavery in the world. Was the bad guy in that show as governor of Canada abolished slavery, and it was the first legislative abolition.
Yeah,
so,
as it turns out, it's very hard to assign villain and hero roles to most characters in most of history. Most people, it turns out, are a mixed bag.
People are complicated?
Yeah, as it turns out.
Man.
America good.
Sucks.
Yeah.
That's simple.
All right, so was...
People are complicated except for George Washington.
No, I have my problems with George Washington.
How dare you, sir?
That was a joke.
Okay. Anyway, so that was Randy Galuza, which he didn't talk a whole lot about Randy Galuza, but that's okay. Worst behaved, we have Nathaniel Jeanson for just being the tiniest little bitch about no one taking him seriously. And that's how I'm going to continue to refer to him, as a little bitch, until he just mans up and accepts the fact that no one takes him seriously and tries to fix that. Because, I mean, he could. People take... Other young Earth creationists take other young Earth creationist Genesis seriously. He could be in that group if he wanted to be.
I take some young Earth creationists seriously, or
maybe
not young Earth creationists. I take some old Earth creationists seriously. Not that I buy their arguments, but like Fuzzrana, for example, right? Like, I'll read what he writes and think this is a serious person making a serious argument. I don't think that about Jeanson. I don't think anybody thinks that about Jeanson. And in my heart of hearts,
I don't think Jeanson thinks that about.
I don't know if Jeanson thinks that about Jeanson.
There you go.
Yeah.
My Unfinished Journey for $2 says, I can see Kent Hovind pronouncing resume. Spelling it? Yeah, I'm not sure he could spell it either. I think he would try to spell like resume, forget the accents, because like he doesn't think that you should ever use accents in English or something. And then be like, no, that's just resume. And then like try to put like a Y at the end or something. I don't know. Like, so let's see. The other worst behaved nominee, that's the word, is Ken Ham for going full-on homophobic, transphobic, QAnon culture war in a way that even his own audience is growing weary of. Even they are like, dude, come on, just stop. So
just build another arc or something, man. That's what the people are at. Just play the hits.
He's saying that he's going to build a Tower of Babel because last time that happened, it worked out so well.
Look, you know what?
Definitely no story in the Bible about that.
No, what he's doing, he's not getting enough credit for this. You know what I think the Babel thing is Jeanson, not Ham. You know what he's doing? Hypothesis testing.
Oh my God, it's a prediction. That's what it is.
Jeanson, for the first time in his career, is going to test a hypothesis, and they are going to replay the Babel dispersal and see
you know,
it actually works.
If they build the Tower of Babel and God comes, destroys it, scatters the people, and remakes a whole bunch of new languages, I'm going to be honest, that would be pretty compelling evidence.
No, I should point out that it's probably better to say Babel than Babel in terms of pronunciation.
Babel. All right, thank you. That
Also,
would be really compelling evidence.
You're welcome out there, Bent Hovind. That's a little bit of an in-joke there. So... Then we have Best Overall. Now, of course, this is not Best Person Overall. This is Best Young Earth Creationist Overall. So I am not saying that I have uncritical opinions about any of these candidates, and I never have about this beforehand either. You know, I have disagreements with both of these people. However, I do think that both of our candidates today stand heads and shoulders above the rest, not every single other Young Earth Creationism, but like
the
vast majority. Rabble, yes. So we have Rebecca for being LGBTQ affirming, despite taking significant amounts of flack on that one. And then we have Peter from Paleologos, who I believe is actually in the chat, by the way. So congratulations, Peter. You've been nominated, I think, for the second time. For trying to accurately convey science as well as calling out other creationists when he finds problems with their arguments, which is actually fairly frequent. I think, like, I haven't counted, but I feel like somewhere around like 20% or so of his videos are just like, hey, creationists, stop being stupid about this thing. And then there's a thing that he talks about that they're being stupid about. So now, look, I haven't done the math. That's just my subjective impression. It's probably biased by the videos of his I find most memorable. So, you know, take that number with a grain of salt. But, yeah, does anyone have final thoughts about any of this?
I think this is a strong year. This is I given the nominations from last year, I don't know that going into this I would have thought that we could have topped it, but fortunately Jensen was there, the
came
Titan
through, man.
Oh, yeah.
striding the worlds.
Well, plus
Really
next year, Raw Matt will once again be in the running, so it'll be an
That's
easier.
Right.
Yeah, much better.
Yeah, I really do think of 2022 in Young Earth Creationism as Jensen's year. Jensen probably also thinks that, but we definitely think about it in opposite ways. Jensen just gave us so much in this past year, and we should all be thankful for just the just amazing rake to the face that is Traced, and then Jensen waltzing into a call-in show and just showing his whole ass multiple times was just just a banner year. You cannot, I mean, this is like when there was one year, I think, when the Beatles put out like Rubber Soul and Revolver in the same year, and it's just like, you can't top that. Like, I dare any Young Earth creationists in 2023 and any year going forward, I dare any of you to top Jensen 2022.
Nice. My final thought is actually, it occurred to me, it's completely off topic, but I like that we have seen strong evidence of the fact that billionaires and occasionally even trillionaires are in fact not particularly smart people. They're not particularly talented. And in fact, they can speedrun the destruction of a fairly stable company in under a month or so. And then, just this month, we had another company decide to try to beat the speedrun record in Wizards of the Coast, going from ubiquitous to basically being universally boycotted in the span of just over a week. So it's been a banner few months for showing just how incompetent company executives can be, which is mostly irrelevant, except that I guess Ken Ham is a nominee, and he's a CEO, and he's also getting a lot of pushback from his audience, who are tired of all the culture war crap, because they don't come to answers in Genesis for QAnon. They come to answers in Genesis for things like apologetics and Young Earth creationism. So, Ken, don't join Twitter and Wizards of the Coast in completely alienating your audience. Perhaps pivot back to what they came there for.
Counterpoint. Do it.
Or yeah.
Burn it all down. You know you want to.
I mean, it would be amusing if AIG just fell out of the top spot. Because, I mean, they are far and away like the most well-funded Young Earth Creationist organization. There's one thing AIG is good at, it's fundraising. And I think it's possibly the only thing they're really good at is fundraising. They're certainly not good at running a zoo with the same staff to animal ratio as the Arcad. Because every time they congratulate their staff, they tell us how many animals they have and how many staff members they have.
But, I mean, let's be fair. Things were wonky during the floods. So.
That's true. Things were wonky.
And the animals now, they need a lot more attention because they're all like genetic entropied. They were fine back then. They were totally cool.
These damn millennial animals, they want, they're always on their cell phones.
Lemurs today, they just have no work ethic. What are you going to do? And don't even get me started about the Zorses lately. Won't pull a carriage for anything. All right, guys. Well, I think that basically wraps up the nominations. So if you want to vote, pull up the description of this channel and pick which candidate for which award you want to vote for. Now, if you've been nominated and you're watching, you're also allowed to vote. You can vote for yourself or someone else.
Come on, Jensen.
Early and often.
Sweep it. The new early and often, the New Jersey way.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you can and even with often, yeah, you can have as many of your alt accounts vote. You can send this to friends and family and urge them to vote for your favorite candidate. I literally do not care how the votes get in, but again, the way that you vote is to hit the like button. Dislikes don't count, comments don't count, only like. And yes, you will probably get ads on them because, I don't know, I want some ad revenue from this, so sorry. You have to sit through an ad or two before you, or actually you don't have to, you can hit like during the ad, I don't think it matters. But otherwise, those videos don't have content. They are just over 10 seconds of silent black screen.
There's an Easter egg in one of them. Watch all of them to be sure.
I will neither confirm nor deny this statement. Although actually one of them is actually demonetized because the title is Worst Behaved Nathaniel Jensen, parentheses, being a little bitch. And YouTube does not like that. So they're like, no, you can't monetize that one. I'm like, you know what? Fair enough, YouTube. Fair enough. So guys, Dan, do you have anything you want to shill for anything coming up on your channel or anything?
Me? Content? It's not a thing that happens. I will eventually be doing things. I have a couple of creation myths lined up. I have a couple of contradictions lined up. And, I really hope that some of the people I've emailed get back to me at some point.
Yeah.
And maybe want to come on for an interview. Everyone that's come on has thought it was a positive experience. Then I'm very nice. So if you're a young Earth creationist and I have emailed you about like, hey, why don't you come on for a chat? Maybe say yes.
Jordan, what do you got?
So like we talked about earlier, we are on episode 2 of 3 on our Shroud of Turin debunking. Never in my wildest dreams did I imagine there'd be 3 episodes worth of content, but the last
it's
one
a
we
deep
did.
rabbit hole. I was surprised too.
Oh my god, I'm so tired of the Shroud of Turin, but you, audience, can profit off my misery. So the latest episode was on the image formation, includes half an hour of me being very excited about radiation. So
Jordan is just currently visiting where I live. Because, like, my entire life is just going down crazy rabbit holes like this. And I'm just like, where does this end? Like, just recently I went down a rabbit hole about, like, why is it that this creationist thinks that you should be able to take intrusive igneous rocks, melt them in a lab, and then have them solidify back into the intrusive form instead of solidifying into the extrusive form, when what you're doing is you're taking it, turning it back into lava, and letting it cool up here at the surface quickly, which is what happens with extrusive rocks. So of course they don't turn back into the intrusive form. That would be crazy. But doesn't matter. This guy's like, no, if you can't melt granite and turn it back into granite, then we don't know anything about how granite forms. And I'm just like, no, dude, I'm sorry that no lab has like 20,000 years for you to wait for your granite lava to cool slowly. But like, what are you gonna do?
You just gotta be patient.
Yeah. So yeah, the crazy rabbit holes like that. So speaking of what's going on this channel, Tuesday we have a Matt with Maddie coming up. I believe we are still in the weeds of a Matt Powell video, and I have said that you're probably going to switch to Matthew McClatchy, Matthew McLean for a video. Is a young Earth creationist paleontologist, just because the constant going between raw Matt and Matt Powell is soul crushing. And Matt McLean isn't exactly someone who, I'm just going to say is like right about all these things and is a super smart man. He's very wrong about very many things in very dumb ways. But like, he's not the air in space, or maybe eating is optional done, right? Like, there's a whole nother level that comes with Matt Powell and raw Matt when it comes to being just complete dumbasses.
Eating is optional, though. I mean,
technically, yes. In the same way that breathing is optional. Yeah. So that's Tuesday. That is going to be the 17th. On the 19th.
Please eat and breathe.
Yeah.
And drink water.
Yeah, not just pina coladas. I mean, do drink those too if you want. I'm double checking what I have set up. Oh yes, the 3 megafaunas of Noah's Flood with Kurt Wise, or Kurt Unwise, as I believe I've titled the. Oh no, I've called it Unwise Fossil Floods is the name of the series. Part 1, the 3 megafaunas of Noah's Flood, which, by the way, we'll get into the fact that Kurt Wise has made up his own idiosyncratic definition for the word megafauna, which is a weird thing to do. He has decided that megafauna now just means faunal assemblage, rather than what it actually means, which is large members of the fauna in an ecosystem, like elephants are megafauna, bison are megafauna. By some definition, humans are megafauna. Because on the scale of, like, all animals, humans are really high up there in terms of size. Humans are big. Yeah, so that is going to be Thursday. Saturday is probably going to be another Dapper Reacts. And do remember, voting is going to stay open for this for at least a few weeks. It's probably going to be a month. So chances are that what's going to happen is we're going to reconvene on probably the 11th of next month. But that's not for sure yet. I have to confer with, the other panelists, and we have to check our schedules and whatnot. So the 4th is a possibility, the 11th is a possibility, the 18th is a possibility. It will almost certainly be one of those 3 weeks. So please, go out there, vote early, vote often, get as many different voting accounts as you want to vote. If you already have 4 or 5 YouTube accounts, feel free to vote with all of them, I don't care. Because again, this is completely meaningless and just for fun. Although, yes, congratulations, Peter, on being nominated twice this year. So, guys, with that...
Congratulations to Jensen for being nominated. I lost count of how many times.
1, 2, 3, 4. 4 times.
Every one of them.
Nathaniel Jensen was nominated 4 times for 2 categories. Which is probably a record.
You know what would be amazing? What would be the perfect bow on this year is if he gets nominated all those times and doesn't manage to win a
Doesn't win any.
He fails. He even fails at failing.
That would be pretty amazing. Yeah. I mean, hey... Ken Ham and SFT. You could take it. Also, if winners want a digital image of their Cambrian bunny trophy, they can let me know. I'm not going to send out a real thing because forget it. But if you want a nice 3D rendered image of the trophy with your name, the year, and the category, I can get that to you once you win.
I have a question about that digital image, and you know exactly what it's going to be.
What is the question?
Is it an NFT?
Currently, no. But I'll tell you what. If you give me the gas money and the price for actually minting it, I'll see what I can do. Which might just be that I rug pull you and don't mint the NFT. It might be that. That might be what happens.
You'll get equal value out of it either way.
Basically. Yeah. Sell an NFT. Sell it as an NFT. Yeah. Look, I don't think one NFT is going to break the environment, even though, as a rule, they're really bad for the environment. So, maybe. Anyway, guys, thank you for coming. Thank you for dressing appropriately this year, Dr. Dan. Jordan, you always dress appropriately for these. So, that goes without saying. Guys, I hope I see all of you on Tuesday. And... we're getting out of here. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for watching, but before you go, I just want to say a special thank you to my channel members and my patrons, especially those pledging $20 or above.
Bob Knob, Work in Progress, Bent Hovend, Tapioca Weasel, Denny5252, Ian Chen, Landon Knoll, Mabdy Babdy, San, Sphincter of Doom, The Venerable Veed, Eleron Teller, and Pat L. Dennis.
As you probably know, YouTube is a very volatile platform, and from month to month, my income on the channel can swing wildly. But the people you see on screen are directly supporting so that I don't have to worry too much about that, and the channel can keep going as it is, and perhaps even improving. If you'd like to join this team, there are links below to join the channel or in the description to join the Patreon. The Patreon starts as low as $1 a month, and the channel memberships start as low as $1.99 a month. On Patreon, you can even get a discount for pledging annually. If you do decide to pledge, you'll get access to an exclusive Discord server just for channel supporters, as well as early access to all of my pre-recorded videos, often up to 2 months in advance. Higher tiers will unlock even better perks. Now, if an annual or monthly pledge isn't right for you, but you still want to support the channel, there is a merch store down in the description, as well as an Amazon wishlist, just for me. And if financial support isn't something you can or want to do, then if you still want to help out the channel, please just like and share these videos and make sure you comment on them. It really helps the channel out. Thanks again for watching.